President Trump is set to make a rare in-person speech at the Department of Justice this afternoon to lay out his vision for the department. Now, the move is uncommon for a sitting president because historically the agency has operated independently of the White House. The last time a sitting president visited the department was in 2015 when President Obama attended a tribute to the outgoing Attorney General Eric Holder. Prior to that, President George W. Bush visited the department to rename the building back in 2001. Government cuts also continue to make headlines. Johns Hopkins University announced it would let go more than 2,000 workers after losing more than $800 million in federal funding. And in a reversal of the Trump administration's efforts to shrink the federal government, two judges have ordered the government to temporarily reinstate thousands of probationary employees who were recently fired. Let's bring in CBS News Chief White House correspondent Nancy Cortez for more on all this. Nancy, there was this deadline last night for executive branch agencies to submit their reorganization plans, prepare for more mass firings. How is this different from the reversal that these federal judges just ordered? And when are we expecting this new round of layoffs to happen?
Right. Two very different situations. So what the federal judges were ruling on was this initial round of mass firings of probationary employees. These were people who had been part of the federal workforce for a shorter period of time, didn't have full civil service protections, and therefore they were easier to fire. But there were still some protections. You had to give a reason. You can't just fire them without cause. And so, by and large, they were told that they were being fired because of poor performance, despite a lot of evidence to the contrary in the form of performance reviews that showed these people were doing a perfectly good job. And so what these federal judges are saying is that these people were fired under false pretenses, and you need to reinstate them because they shouldn't have been fired in the first place. Now, there's going to be an appeal by the Trump administration. They say they're going to let this play out. So nobody is getting reinstated right now. The reductions in force that you talked about, these memos that were due by yesterday with significant cuts, this is a whole different process by which the federal government actually can lay off or fire large numbers of people legally without providing a particular reason. And the way that they go about that is by providing what's called a reduction in force plan, basically saying, hey, we've got 2,000 people working over here. We don't need them because we don't want to do this particular job anymore. These jobs have been rendered obsolete, or we don't need as many people to do that job as we once did. If you lay out a plan like that and then you give the workers 30 or 60 days notice that there are going to be changes coming to their division, you then can lay them off, and it doesn't have to have anything to do with how they're performing. And so those are are individuals who are still watching and waiting to see whether they are going to be laid off, possibly around the May or June timeframe.
Nancy, let's discuss the cuts at Johns Hopkins. This is due to a loss of funding from the United States Agency for International Development, or USAID, a department that many people are familiar with hearing now over the last few weeks. What's the impact, and should we expect to see this happen at other colleges and universities?
It already is, and not just because of the cuts to USAID, but also because of deep cuts to federally funded research. And of course, universities are, one of the main places that does all that research. And so we've seen hiring freezes at Harvard University, at the University of Pennsylvania, and other institutions of higher learning. And so it's another example of sort of the second order impacts of these federal job cuts and federal spending cuts, is that you're now seeing pullbacks at universities around the country. And for federal workers who are scientists, think about, for example, at NOAA, where they laid off hundreds of meteorologists and other technological experts. Universities might be one of the employers that they would ordinarily turn to as a potential place to find a job that suits their skills and abilities. But if a lot of universities are now not hiring, it makes it all that much more difficult for someone with a technical background like that to be able to find a job.
And Nancy, when it comes to tariffs, CBS News has found that President Trump has made a slew of misleading claims in an effort to support tariffs on Canada. This includes exaggerating the U.S. trade deficit, with Canada overstating the amount of fentanyl coming across the border from the north. How are these claims factoring into the trade war and the relationship with one of our closest allies?
It has frustrated the Canadians. At times they've made fun of it. But the reality is that if he is imposing new tariffs on Canada for any reason, they are going to have to respond in kind. And that is why we see the escalation that we've been watching this week that ended with President Trump threatening 200% tariffs on wine coming from the EU.
Nancy Cortez, thank you. As we mentioned, President Trump will address the Justice Department this afternoon. Joining us right now from Washington is CBS News Department of Justice correspondent Scott MacFarlane. Scott, it's not common for a president to personally make a trip there, particularly for this purpose. Why is he doing it, and do we know what he'll say?
It's not common for this venue to be the site of any political speeches. This is the Great Hall of the Department of Justice headquarters, the Robert Kennedy building here in Washington. It has the makeup of an auditorium, and it has the feel right now of a campaign rally. You can hear the music of Grease playing behind me. It has had a rally playlist for the last hour. President Trump speaks here today, according to White House officials, about law and order initiatives, a deeper focus, they say, on law and order, but it unmistakably has the feel of a campaign rally with invited guests below, seats lined up before a stage that has to the side of the podium, Lindsay, signs that say fighting fentanyl and packets of drugs on the stage.
You know, the DOJ historically its own entity. So what does this signal about how the president intends to have it operate over the next 4 years?
Now, this is a shattering of norms, to be sure, to have a presidential address inside an agency that has long prided itself and secured its independence from political actors. Whether the tone and topic of his speech infuses that criticism with new energy or mutes some of that criticism remains to be seen. But we're knocking down a wall here today by having a president speak in the Great Hall of the Justice Department. The last time we found this happen was in 2015 when President Obama was here for the retirement of then Attorney General Eric Holder. You know, one Justice Department official told me presidents come here to cut ribbons or cut cakes, not to cut policy initiatives.
Right, not to lay out a vision. Scott, as you know, there have been significant reductions at the department. Once the president's remarks end, some of the fired employees will speak across the street. What are we expecting to hear?
Yeah, that'll be led by some congressional Democrats who've been critical of the purge that's underway inside the Department of Justice right now. There have been widespread firings or forced retirements and resignations of line prosecutors who handled January 6 cases, some FBI officials and others inside the department. They have concerns about that, and we expect some of those former Justice Department officials to be part of the press conference across the street. One difference, we don't expect the music of Olivia Newton-John and John Travolta to echo off the walls like it is here now.
Get your dancing shoes on, Scott MacFarlane. Thank you.